Smiley's in the making. We gotta fight the powers that be. Got so many voices. Saying all the same. Giving up all around me. Faces full of pain. I try to play my music. They say my music's too loud. I try talking about it. I got the big run around. And when I roll with the punches, I got knocked on the ground by all this bullshit going down. Hey, time is truly wasted.
I'm Tavis Smiley, and as we do every Monday and Thursday, at the top of the second hour, we are pleased to be in conversation with our dear friend and brother, the Du Bois of our time, Dr. Cornel West. Dr. West, Happy New Year, sir. How are you?
Brother, it is a blessing that we made it through. We always count our blessing, even in the midst of this grimness and dimness, brother. We start with gratitude. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we start with gratitude for making it another year. I hear you. I hear the Isley Brothers Fight the Pride. That's your walk-on song, the first song of the year.
That's exactly right, so brother. Because what we are experiencing coming out of the White House is the intensification of the gangsterization of the world, but it's also the intensification and the niggerization of black people, working people, and the third world. So we got to come up with ways of armoring ourselves in the face of the intense gangsterization and in the face of the intense niggerization. By niggerization, I just mean trying to convince people they're less beautiful, less moral, that they are inferior, trying to convince people that are walking around with fear and feeling intimidated and feeling as if we don't have the power to fight, to resist, to be resilient, as Sister Christina was saying in that wonderful dialogue with you, my brother.
Yeah. So I started today's show at the top of the first hour, as I do every day, with our rundown of the day and who's going to be on in each of the hours or half hours. And so I said to the audience just over an hour ago, the Dr. West will be here, of course, at the top of the second hour, and we're going to talk a bit about Venezuela, primarily because Dr. West and I were honored some years ago to travel together to Venezuela to meet with Nicholas Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chávez. On that trip was Cornel West and yours truly and Danny Glover and Harry Belafonte and Dolores Huerta and Walter Mosley and a few others. But there were a group of us who were honored to be a part of this special delegation. And we traveled again to Venezuela to meet with, again, Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chávez. I had the honor, I guess, few years thereafter to interview Chávez a second time when he was in New York City for his annual address at the UN, when all the world leaders show up in September. So I had the honor a couple of times to spend some time with Chávez, who, of course, died of cancer. I mean, he dies of cancer. It opens the door for Maduro to become president. We all know now what's happened to Nicolas Maduro and his wife, abducted by the U.S. government in this, as I said earlier, territorial adventurism. He appeared in court literally just an hour ago, he and his wife, to plead not guilty. Just catching you up right quick here in case you're just tuning in. He was in court in the last hour or so to plead not guilty in New York City to 4 counts that have been levied against him, including drug terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns, and destructive devices. He said in that courtroom, "I was captured." He said in that courtroom, "I am innocent. I am not guilty. I am a decent man." The appearance was brief, but it was required, of course, and necessary. And so he has made his appearance in the first of any number of legal proceedings that are going to kick off, as I said earlier, a prolonged fight about whether or not he can, in fact, be put on trial in the U.S. Not a foregone conclusion at the moment that he can, in fact, be put on trial, but he has been arrested. He has been captured. He has now been indicted. He appeared in court and, again, pled, along with his wife, not guilty to these 4 charges that have been brought against him. Now, when we come forward, I want to start by asking Dr. West what he recalls about that trip to Venezuela that he and I were blessed to take together, and what he recalls about our meeting with Chávez inside the presidential palace there in Venezuela. And we will jump from there. But we'll start with Chavez because you can't talk about how Maduro got there without talking about the guy who preceded him. So a little history lesson from Cornel West when we come forward about Hugo Chavez. Then we'll work our way to Maduro and work our way to the mess that we find ourselves in with America doing what it's always done, bullying people around the globe. You're listening, and I'm glad about it. Dr. Cornel West on Tavis Smiley.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Dr. Cornel West, as we are every Monday and Thursday, top of the second hour. All right, Doc, I want to make the most of the time that we have. Let me just jump right in. So you and I had the honor of traveling to Venezuela. You recall that trip, sir?
Oh, my God. Very much so, my brother. Indeed, indeed. No, it was really a joy to be with Brother Hugo Chavez, who had tried to initiate and inaugurate the Bolivarian Revolution. It was simply an attempt to attack the overwhelming poverty in the country, to attack the foreign ownership of the oil, whose profits were going outside of the country rather than being used to empower poor and working people in education, empower them with jobs, empower them with free health care, and an attempt to try to restore the great dignity of a grand people. Now, you recall, of course, that one of the things that Hugo Chavez was concerned about was the U.S. had declared war on his revolution.
That's right.
So there were attempted coups. 2002, there were claims that he was illegitimate, but he was elected. Then they had referendums, and he had referendums, was reelected again. And so you had all the various lies told on the brother as he was trying to come to terms with the overwhelming poverty and foreign control of the minerals and resources of his country. Now, I've never met Maduro. Now, my hunch is, Maduro couldn't beat Chavez because Chavez was a giant. There's no doubt about it. And he's a human being. He had his own failings, but he was a giant. Now, Maduro, I've never met him. It looks as if he tried to keep the Bolivarian Revolution going, but my hunch is the war against the Bolivarian Revolution continued, and then Maduro must have fallen into certain kinds, I don't know whatever it is, corruption. I don't know exactly what the evidence is, but it just strikes me is that he was not able to sustain the same levels of support that Chavez did. And you've had, 8 million brothers and sisters leave Venezuela because of the sanctions, because of the various forms of war against the Bolivarian Revolution, and then now the gangster move. But the gangsterism was already in place. The coups have been in place for a long time, not just in Venezuela.
Yeah.
The United States has intervened in 30 of the 33 countries in Latin America. They viewed Latin America not just as the backyard, as the Monroe Doctrine of 1823 put forward, but free access to the resources, labor as well as natural resources of Latin America, as if they were simply people reduced to objects and land reduced to profit making. And that's the gangsterization that we're talking about. And of course, there's elective affinities to what the way in which Africa's been perceived, the way in which the genocide in Gaza, not human beings, just objects to crush, that we've seen in U.S. foreign policy in the last 100 years or so. So this is old-style imperialism. This is old-style gangsterism, and it ain't nothing new for black folk because we've struggled with that version within the U.S. empire in terms of seeing our humanity supposedly reduced to just objects to be manipulated, enslaved, Jim Crow, hated, subjugated, dominated. But we continue to be resilient. And the people of Venezuela will continue to be resilient.
There's a lot that Dr. West has just laid out there, and I want to unpack some of that in a second here. But since you mentioned Gaza, there is some breaking news in this regard. And it's actually not breaking news today. It came out a few days ago. You may have missed it over the holidays. And I'll raise this now. We'll come back to it a little bit later in this conversation. But since Doc mentioned Gaza, and we mentioned Netanyahu earlier in this conversation, earlier in this show, I should say, Christina Greer mentioned it in the first hour, and I mentioned as well, Bibi Netanyahu has publicly announced that he supports and agrees with Donald Trump abducting Maduro and bringing him here to this country to face charges. So Netanyahu is on Trump's side in this issue. No surprise there. But here's what I want you to know, in case you missed it during the holidays, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced his country's plans to award the Israel Prize to, wait for it, Donald Trump, breaking with tradition to honor a non-Israeli and marking the first time that the highest prize in Israel will go to another country's president. So Donald Trump is going to be the recipient of the Israel Prize, the first non-Israeli to receive that distinct honor inside of Israel. We'll talk about that with Dr. West here in a few minutes here, but I just want to share that with you since you mentioned Gaza and mentioned Netanyahu, if you didn't hear that news. So again, Donald Trump and Bibi continue their bromance, as it were. Again, put a pin in that for the moment. Let me circle back to this Monroe Doctrine that you mentioned. I mentioned it in the first hour. Donald Trump is chiding people every minute now. He's no longer calling it the Monroe Doctrine. He's calling it the Donroe Doctrine. So I ask you, where is the Donroe Doctrine going to take us? Where are we going to end up a few years from now, Doc, if he continues to advance this Donroe Doctrine in the way he's done it now in Venezuela?
Well, I think it ends up where all forms of gangsterization end up, though, brother. You end up doomed running up against a wall and having the people awake, organize, mobilize, and have to engage in fundamental change and transformation. There's no way that any kind of positive force for good, democracy, or justice can survive when you got organized greed and weaponized hatred at the center of it. And that's what the gangsterization is, and that's what we've been seeing out of Trump for a good while. But it's not just Trump. We've been seeing this out of American foreign policy. And again, though, brother, it's not just Latin America. Now, see, it's complicated. For example, when we talk about Iran, you got Iranian brothers and sisters in the streets, too. It's being overshadowed right now with Venezuela. They're in the streets, too. Now, their government has been supportive of the Palestinians, and that to me is a positive thing, but their government itself is repressing and oppressing their people, and you end up with the U.S. government supposedly supporting the people of Iran, but no, they don't really want to support the people of Iran. They just want any government that is not critical of Israel and not critical of the United States. So we got to keep track of this awakening that's taking place across the board. And be anti-imperialist at the core of it.
Yeah. You're right about the fact, and we all know this, of course, this is just another example of old-style imperialism. But give me your read of how you see Donald Trump uniquely leaning into this narrative of old-style U.S. imperialism.
Well, I mean, it's just who he is. He's being true to who he is, that he's a gangster, he's a bully, he's a thug. And old style imperialism was nothing but just the thugification of the world. When they sat down in 1883 in Berlin and said we're going to divide up Africa based on drawing lines on a piece of paper on a table, that was nothing but the thugification of the world. And the vast majority of the people in the world live in the third world. They live in the global south, as is talked about these days. And we have to recognize that our destiny is tied to the global south. And so if we think we can treat them like slaves, like colonized people, like subjugated people, like dominated people, then we run up against the same wall that white supremacy ran up against in the 1860s, ran up against in the 1960s. Now, no, at the moment, we can say to ourselves, well, it looks like this evil is triumphing. Well, yeah, we are a wretched species, and it looks like greed and hatred is in the driver's seat. But keep in mind that it's a short-term affair. It cannot last. This too shall pass.
What's your sense of, I'm trying to track as fast as I can, I know you're doing the same thing, trying to track as quickly as I can the way that other world leaders are responding to what's happened here. I mentioned what Bibi Netanyahu had to say. about it. But what's your read? Again, this is nothing new, but here we find ourselves again in a moment where we are, bullying people around the globe, as Doc calls it, old-style imperialism. What's your sense of how, in this particular moment, this is going to be read? And I ask that question in part because, as you well know, you and I discussed this before on this program in our private conversations, we see Donald Trump's leading countries around the world. That is to say, we see these conservative voices, these voices full of hate, taking hold in leadership positions around the globe. So, at a moment like this, where there are people again in countries here, there, and everywhere that have Donald Trump-style leaders, I wonder whether or not in a moment like this we can count on or expect that other world figures will bemoan, will call this exactly what it is during Donald Trump's watch?
Well, it's a wonderful question, though, brother, because, see, part of the problem is that so many of the older leaders who are still in place believe that the rules-based international order, with international law and human rights being acknowledged and affirmed, still have some weight. But the reality is that rules-based international order has been completely has been completely called into question.
Mm-hmm.
Its legitimacy is radically called into question. Gaza is probably the turning point. It was clear that the nations don't give a damn about international law. They don't give a damn about human rights. They don't give a damn about rule-based international order, because when it was time to stand up, they didn't do it. So it's their hypocrisy that shows that they don't really have an allegiance to it. So when they call for the international laws to somehow regulate gangster activity of Trump in Venezuela, but they can't say a mumbling word about the U.S.-sponsored genocide mediated with Netanyahu, people say there's no moral authority here. So we are in a moment where I would say it's a jungle, but then it reminds me the jungle is much more based on harmony and equilibrium than lawlessness of human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're in a jungle-like situation, and the only fundamental response has to be people on the ground, strong social movements, people organizing, raising their voices, and putting pressure on cowardly leaders. That's true in the United States. It's true in Latin America. It's true of the Arab countries in terms of their leadership tied to Trump, but the masses of their people in solidarity with the Palestinians.
Yeah.
It's true even, you see what I mean? So we have to keep track of the grassroots people, the ordinary people, not their corrupt, cowardly leaders. That's true across the world.
You said two things I want to give you a chance to unpack right quick here. Number one, I don't at all disagree with your critique of world leaders at the moment, but specifically I want to focus quickly on the United Nations. You used the term moral authority a moment ago. I wonder in a moment like this whether the UN, they're watching exactly what we're watching. They see what happened. I see some trying to raise their voices. I wonder whether or not, to your mind, the UN has any authority right now, moral or otherwise.
Brother, I appreciate you giving me that book by Brother Cal on Ralph Bunch. Bunch is the international figure, and I've got my own critique of Ralph, but he's still turning over in his grave because the internationalism in his own liberal mode that he was promoting, he knows has been radically called into question. The rug has been pulled under.
That's right.
And in that sense, when they talk about the United Nations is just so impotent, it's so empty, it's so hollow, and yet it's still something that can be a force for good if they get their act together. But at the moment, it just is unable to have the kind of authority, moral, spiritual, or political, on an international level that it ought to have, and it's a sad reality.
Yeah, Doc mentioned cowardly leaders a moment ago. Venezuela's interim president is a woman named Delcy Rodriguez. She has heretofore been known as a Chavista. We talked about Hugo Chávez earlier. She has been known as a Chavista, and that's a huge compliment inside of Venezuela. That's how she has been known, and she started out sounding that way, taking Donald Trump and the U.S. to task for this act of war And now she's made a U-turn. I quote from her now, her latest post on Instagram. We invite the U.S. government to collaborate with us on an agenda of cooperation oriented towards shared development within the framework of international law to strengthen lasting community coexistence, close quote. Donald Trump, his threats have gotten to her already, Doc.
Yeah, and it's hard to know exactly what's going on there. You know what I mean? I know Ruby acts as if he either made a deal with her or somebody in the thing in terms of allowing them to even stay in power at the moment. But I must say that her initial speech is at the center of what I'm calling the niggerization of the third world, which is we will not be slaves.
That's right.
We will not be anybody's colony. We will not be anybody's subject to be dominated and subjugated. You see, that is the resistance to niggerization. That's the resistance to gangsterization in those words when they're lived out at levels of genuine resistance and opposition and organization and mobilization with a moral spirit and moral substance, but strong courage. That is something that we do want to highlight at this moment. I thought that speech was one of the most salutary in the last few days.
Yep. I got 60 seconds here. I close with this. I assume it was no surprise to you when Bibi announced, Netanyahu announced that Donald Trump will be the first non-Israeli to receive the Israel Prize, Doc.
Brother, it's like one elected mafioso leader giving another elected mafioso leader a peace prize after they didn't kill thousands and thousands of folk, let alone genocide, and now old-style imperial invasion and occupation. Please, both of them get off the crack pipe, brother.
That's why we started and we close with the Isley Brothers. Fight the Power. It was the first walk-on song of Dr. West in this year. We'll do it again, Lord willing, come Thursday. Doc, love you. Talk to you soon. Stay strong.
Love you, brother. Stay strong, though, man.